Council. We're very honored that you're here. If you're just getting in, please fix yourself a heaping plate of middle of the island. It's delicious. And come find your seat, because our program is just about to begin. The Cape Fear Literacy Council is a more than 30-year-old nonprofit, and we provide one-on-one and small class instruction for adults. Those may be people who have grown up in this community, or maybe they're immigrants from another community, either learning how to read, write, do math, speak English, communicate. We do job skills, we do health literacy, digital literacy. We tailor education to help the adults that want to improve themselves. And we are very grateful to all of you for coming out to learn more about our program and to support our wonderful mission. Here is our board chair, Kelly Zegras.
Thank you so much, Yasmin. We are so grateful that you're here today. And I just want you to look around you for a second and take a look at the amazing community that we have in Wilmington and the Cape Fear region. We really could not do this without you. So thank you for being here today. We're going to get a little active today. We want to see who's in the room and see who's contributed so wonderfully to our organization. So I'm going to ask you to do a little bit of standing up and sitting down. So if the category I call out applies to you, stand up. So here we go. If you are here with one of our core Literacy Council annual partners, that would be Live Oak Bank, PNC Bank, St. Andrew's Covenant Presbyterian Church, or the Star News, would you please stand? Thank you so much for your contribution to the Literacy Council. If you are here with one of our event sponsors, if you could please stand. Our event sponsors. If you're an event sponsor table with a sign, you're an event sponsor. Okay, thank you so much. We couldn't do this without our event sponsors. If you are one of our elected officials in our community or our state, would you please stand? Thank you so much for advocating on behalf of organizations like the Literacy Council. We appreciate you and your hard work. Host today. You're a table host. Those are folks that helped us out by filling this wonderful room today. They committed to paying for your tickets at your table and to inviting you along to see what we're doing in this amazing organization. So if you're a table host, please stand. Thank you so much. If you are part of the Women's Impact Network, the Women's Impact Network has given us a very special opportunity this year. Some of you may have heard about our newest program called COWS, and it's a kind of funny little name for Computers on the Mills. But as we all know, in this world today, in the 21st century, we need lots of digital literacy, and that's the direction that we need to make sure that we offer support. So if you're part of the Women's Impact Network, if you would please stand. Thank you for making that program possible. If you are a volunteer or a tutor, if you would please stand. Volunteer or a tutor, or have ever been a volunteer or a tutor. And if you are a learner in our organization, if you would also stand. Our tutors and our learners are the heart of our organization. It's why we're here, it's what we're doing, and we appreciate you so much. You make this an inspiring place to be. We appreciate you. All right, so I'm going to turn it over now. We're going to get started with our invocation. Reverend Easton has been so gracious to do that for us. Thank you so much for being here today.
Hello, welcome to Pine Valley United Methodist Church. Just real quick, if you do need restrooms, we have some at the back of the room here, and there's some out in the hallway as well. Give a preacher a microphone, and 30 minutes later, you can get started. Will you bow with me in prayer? Lord, as we pray, let us be a continued source of hope for those in need and contentment for those who are lonely. Let us give gratitude for the opportunity to serve in such a wonderful community. And let the feelings of love, kindness, well-directed and gentle spirits always be reflected in our actions. And for the food that nourishes our bodies and for the fellowship here that feeds our souls, for all things good and beautiful which our lives are filled, we give thanks today. Teach us that even if we cannot do what the world perceives as great things, we can at least do small things in a great and wonderful way. May we always be sincere in our efforts to help others. And now, Lord, bless this food in the hands that prepared it to our use and to your service. Amen.
I'm Ann Stokely, and I'm one of the tutors that helps with the Lightbulb Learners class. We're going to do our Readers Theater performance today. I want to recognize my co-tutors, Dick Robbins and Ann Maxwell, or Ann. Around the globe and over the centuries, there have been many quests for freedom. Disorganized American colonists came together 250 years ago to fight for freedom from the tyranny of Great Britain. They followed a man of great character who was a thoughtful and visionary leader, George Washington. Had this battle to freedom been led by someone else, I think most of us would agree there may have been a completely different outcome. By Washington's side, before, during, and after the Revolution, was a person who I would guess none of you have ever heard of, Billy Lee. He was a slave, but he was also Washington's valet, huntsman, recorder, aide-de-camp, and confidant. The Revolution had a double meaning for Billy. He hoped that the phrase, "all men are created equal," applied to him and all other slaves in 1776. We know this was not to be, but now get ready to hear a fascinating piece of American history from our Readers Theater performers. Introducing Lacey Tate as Colonel John Lee, a wealthy Virginian who originally owned Billy Lee's family, and Lacey's also a narrator. Barbara Pearson as narrator, Safonda Edwards as narrator, and Martha Washington, wife of George Washington for over 40 years. Thomas Timony as George Washington, Commander of the Continental Army and First President of the United States. Vincent Durant as younger Billy Lee, enslaved manservant and valet to George Washington. Willie Brown as narrator and older Billy Lee, a cobbler after the Revolutionary War. Janice Bryant as narrator and Mr. Tobias Lear, George Washington's secretary, and Carolyn James as a narrator. The Readers Theater performers present The Path to Freedom.
The first time I saw Colonel Washington was at a fox hunt. Lord, was he big. Big head, big butt, big strong hands. When he swung up on his horse, I felt sorry for the horse.
We heard he was a big man, but how did he ride? Whether he rode fast or slow, it was like he was glued to the saddle. Didn't bump at all. Didn't stand in the stirrup. Just glided easy like.
Washington noticed Billy too. He caught up with Billy at the foxhole where the hounds dug.
Who the hell are you, and where did you learn to ride like that?
My name is William Lee, sir, but most folks call me Billy. Ride's just natural to me, sir. Colonel Lee taught me the simple stuff. After that, I just got better and faster.
Yes, and Billy can read and write. Copies all of my letters. His mother is our cook, and he always helps her out.
Colonel Lee died later, and I bought Billy and his brother. I never liked to break up slave families, but the family would not sell their mama.
Billy rode out with Washington every day on the inspection of the farm and property from Virginia to Ohio. He kept records and handled some of his master's correspondence.
Anybody at Mount Vernon who wanted to get Washington's attention had to go through Billy.
But things were changing. People were upset over taxes on goods from England. Virginia made Colonel Washington the commander of militia. Things was really heating up in Boston when Billy and the other slaves heard about the Boston Tea Party.
they had a big laugh. Can you believe it? Again, the white folks shaving their heads and painting themselves like Indians. They dumping crates of tea in the back.
Before you knew it, we were going to war. That's when Patrick Henry said, "Give me liberty or give me death."
Sound like he meant it too. I like my freedom too, but I wasn't thinking about trying to get there, dying to get there.
The Continental Congress promoted me to general, in charge of all the colony's troops.
By the time General Washington and Billy made their way to Boston, the New England Minutemen had killed or wounded over 1,000 British soldiers.
The British dressed in their fine red uniforms and those tall hats to make them look like giants. Our soldiers, a sorry-looking bunch. The general did not like what he saw. Messy camps, drunk soldiers, and the stench.
The journal even had to break up a snowball fight.
Raw will be a better word. Soldiers were biting and gouging each other. Washington rushed in and grabbed the two biggest, brawniest riflemen by the throats. He kept them at arm's length, shaking them and lecturing.
I blamed the whole thing on their officers. I demoted a colonel and 5 captains over this incident.
I could tell this made a big impression on these so-called soldiers. The general immediately restored order. There were other surprises. There were colored soldiers. Some were free men, others were slaves promised freedom for exchange for their enlistment. I have to admit, I was shocked.
I knew I had to hold every man I had, as ill-disciplined as they were. But the colored soldier had more incentive than pay. Freedom is a powerful motivator.
We surprised the Brits by dragging 59 cannons from a fort in New York, 300 miles through ice and snow. When they got sight of our artillery, they hightailed it out of Boston in the middle of the night.
Our strategy was to defend and pick our battles carefully.
Then, on July the 4th, 1776, something happened to change everything.
Right? I remember that day so clearly. This fancy-looking letter came from Congress. Congress approved the resolution that these 13 former colonists are no longer members of the British Empire.
We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with unalienable rights, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness.
Hooray!
But then I started to think, right then and for the first time, that this war we were fighting was about me. The only words I hear are, all men are created equal.
We are now a free and independent nation.
Yes, sir, sure enough. But what about all men are created equal? Don't those words mean I'm a free man?
No, they don't, Billy, and I'm sorry.
I'm a man, ain't I?
Yes, you are, William Lee, and a fine man at that.
But I'm not free.
No, Billy.
Then this declaration is just words. It says all men are created equal, but it doesn't mean me. If we win this war, will I be free?
Someday you will be free, just not now.
The general knew he couldn't fight the traditional way, but he was sly as a fox. So we just kept moving.
It sounds strange, but back then, Army usually took the winter off. Nobody liked to do battle in the cold.
But the general, he had other ideas. Our soldiers were in rags and barefoot, but eager to do battle. The general, he was a leader, and the troops had confidence in him.
Now it's Christmas Eve, and we need to get across the Delaware River to Trenton. We're up against the Hessians, Germans paid by the Brits to kick the crap out of us.
So we crossed the Delaware at night. You might have noticed me in that famous painting of the crossing. It was snowing, freezing cold. Our boats was loaded with men, artillery, and our horses, navigating around huge chunks of ice.
Dawn was breaking, and we captured 900 Haitian soldiers who were sleeping off their Christmas celebration.
Now the war keeps dragging on. Now we're in Valley Forge, and it's another freezing winter with nothing to do except be miserable. One day, a big Prussian with about 10 names arrived. General von Steuben.
He only knew a few words of English, but he sure knew a lot about person and soldiering. He taught the men how to maneuver in battle, and if we have to retreat, to do it orderly-like, not like a flock of birds.
He also showed us how to use our bayonets. Mostly, he gave us confidence.
So many died that winter, not from fighting, but from smallpox and starvation. Troops couldn't desert because they were too sickly.
Morale was terrible. Congress didn't want to pay anybody. Made the general so mad.
We finally got a good chance to fight those redcoats. Only this time it was blazing hot, June 1778 at Monmouth, New Jersey.
As soon as the redcoats started firing, our officers in charge deserted us. With the Brits in fast pursuit, the general rode to the front to take charge.
He called out to us, "Will you fight?" We all responded and gave 3 lusty cheers.
The general was so brave, our training kicked in. He forced us in line and urged us on.
The heat was so great that the general's beloved horse dropped dead. Billy rushed through the front line with a fresh mare.
The Brits stole away that night, and neither side claimed victory.
The war dragged on for 3 more years.
At the final battle of Yorktown, the general was standing there with bullets whizzing by him. I finally couldn't stand it anymore and threw myself on top of him.
Billy, what the hell did you do that for?
General, if you die, I'll never be free.
Finally, the Brits surrendered. No one could believe we had actually won. A ragtag army of colonists beat one of the grandest armies in the world.
Hooray! Someone else who was in camp with the Germans for most of the war was Mrs. Washington. She was a brave lady and a loyal wife.
She was a true patriot, but I knew she didn't see the freedom question quite like the general.
Washington knew he had to discuss Billy's request for freedom with Martha. He greatly valued her opinion.
I've been thinking about something, dear. Billy has served me loyally and well. Now he wants his reward, his freedom.
Billy's a fine fellow, no doubt, but if you set him free, you can start a revolt here at Mount Vernon. There are many slaves who have served us well across the years, George. What about them?
Billy's special. He's fought with me and saved my life a couple of times.
Are you saying we fought this terrible war, not to free ourselves from England, but to free our slaves?
After watching so many colored soldiers fighting bravely, some dying in battle, and living day and night with Billy, I freely admit my ideas have changed.
But there was other things to be focused on. In 1788, George Washington was elected the first president of the United States.
Billy wanted to go to New York for Washington inauguration, but his knees were weak from years of horseback riding. He broke one and later the other. He couldn't ride anymore.
I went back to Mount Vernon and learned to be a cobbler, where I could work sitting down. My wishes for freedom was not to be.
After serving a second term as president, Washington retired from public life. He went back to Mount Vernon to live out his days.
But tragedy followed. Less than 2 years later, after a long ride to check out our farms on a wet and nasty December day, my dear husband returned home feeling weak. Even though 3 doctors worked on him, he got worse over the next few days, and he died, Martha by his side.
Billy just cried. George Washington was buried 3 days later at Mount Vernon.
After the funeral, all the slaves were called into the big house to learn what would happen to them. Mr. Lear, Washington's secretary, started talking.
General Washington loved Mount Vernon. He appreciated deeply the work that all you folks had done for him. I'm going to read from his will. Upon the death of my wife, and all the slaves I own in my own right shall receive their freedom.
The general didn't own all the slaves at Mount Vernon. Some legally belonged to Mrs. Washington's family, and they couldn't be free in his will.
And General Washington wanted all of you to be taken care of, free or not. Everyone should be clothed and fed. The young slaves should be supported until they are 25 years old, taught to read, and trained in a useful occupation.
I thought that sounded pretty good. Then Mr. Lear looked straight at me.
William Lee, General Washington wrote that you should be set free when he died. You are free as I read this, Billy.
I was pretty choked. I was choked up pretty good. I could hardly believe I was free. Free at that very moment. Free after 50 years as a slave.
He said even more, Billy, you will receive free room and board for the rest of your life and $30 a year. You may stay here at Mount Vernon or wherever you choose.
The general wrote that he did this as a testament to your attachment to him and for your perfect service to the general during the Revolutionary War. Thank you for your service.
By now, my tears were flowing. I never have to worry about money again as long as I live. But most important, I am a free man. It's wonderful to be free.
Yeah.
Guys, so much. We are so proud of, actually somebody leaned over and asked, did they learn to read at the Literacy Council? Like, they couldn't believe how great you are. And we're very proud of you and the work that you do. Most of these folks work together as a team, but also with one-on-one tutors. We're very grateful to the volunteers that make this possible. And we're very proud to have something that we can show folks, because most of what we do at the Literacy Council is very private and confidential. So we're grateful to all of you. Thank you. And now I want to say a little bit about, we've been around for more than 30 years, so we are part of many networks of service, and we're part of workforce development, and one of our partners through that effort is Link, Leading into New Communities. Is Frankie here? Hopefully he'll get here in just a moment, because the young lady who's going to speak now, her name is Cynthia. She is referred to us by Link, and her goal was to move her life into a more positive direction. She wanted to get her GED, to go on to Cape Fear Community College, another one of our partners, so that she could start a career that would really help other people too. I'm proud to say that Cynthia has already passed 4 out of 5 sections of the GED, and she is here to tell you about her experience today.
Thank you so much. First of all, I would also like to say thank you so much to all of you that are involved in helping people like me actually get educations and seek out careers and become good people in their community. First of all, my name is Cynthia Martin. I'm 46 years old. I'm from Winston-Salem, North Carolina. I now reside in Wilmington. Growing up, education wasn't a big part of our lives. I mean, they said go to school, but I quit school when I was 16 years old, and I chased boys. But later on, I got married, and I started having children, and that was the focus of my life at that time. And, having children made me want to go back to school and get my GED, which I tried, and of course, I quit again. I just saw that I didn't have the time to do it. So as my children got older and my marriage was over, I began to get involved in addiction. And that addiction led me to incarceration. Something I believe will never happen to someone like me. And that incarceration led me here to Wilmington, by the grace of God, to Link. Link literally helped me see that I was somebody who could be a great part of a community that loved me and that I could actually benefit that community. They stood by me, they helped me, they taught me so many things, as well as introduced me to the wonderful Miss Nancy at the Literacy Council. She encouraged me to no end. I, of course, had doubts, but being that I was at Link and I had come a long way in my life, I refused to give up this time. I refused to turn back this time. And people at the Literacy Council, like Miss Nancy, encouraged me, told me I didn't have to give up. They were right there by my side the entire time, as well as my tutors. I've had 2 tutors. They have been amazing. The first 3 tests I passed pretty quickly. The last one that I'm on is giving me a hard time. And this tutor that I have, his name is Mr. Martin. He is stuck by me like glue, and I thank God for him. The Literacy Council not only has helped me while encouraging me, they have financially assisted me with getting my GED, which has been more than a blessing. Because so many people that don't have educations do not have the finances to pay for an education. So as well as that, they have also helped me remember my goals. My goals were to get a GED, get a certificate in peer support. Then from there, I want to go on to college and get a degree in human services, because there are so many people like myself out there that need someone like I had to tell them they can make it. And I just wanted to say thank you again to the Literacy Council, to Link, to all of you great people in this community who support us. Thank you again. Have a great day.
Thank you so much, Cynthia. So the Literacy Council actually has 2 programs, just to make sure everybody knows, and one of them is our English for Speakers of Other Languages, or ESL, and our next speaker today, his name is Mongza. He is a refugee from Burma, originally, and he came to the United States, I think, in 2013, and has been coming to English classes. He and his wife, Ruth, come to classes at the Literacy Council when they are not making sushi at Harris Teeter at Longleaf Mall. You'll enjoy it even more now. And recently he became eligible to earn his U.S. citizenship. He's here to tell you about that experience.
Hello everyone. Hello. My name is Mao Zhao, and today I am an American citizen. was born in Burma, and I came to United States in 2013. My wife, Ruth, and I make sushi at the Harris Teeter Dowling Mall, and we have a young daughter named Rachel, and they are also American citizens now. When we first came to America, we went to the Letters-Free Council English classes at the Unity Church. I remember I'm riding my bike to get there. We kept going to English classes whenever we did not work. And we spent many years studying in English and learning about America. Last year, we became eligible for the citizenships. That is when Ruth and I started coming to the classes on Sunday afternoons at the Letters-Free Council. Mrs. Carroll teaches us in English classes every week about the U.S. government, neutralization, and American history. She helped us learn the 100 questions that we needed to know for the interviews. Ms. Lauren and Ms. Ellis helped us with the N400 paperwork, all 20 pages of it. When it was time to study for the interview, we practiced with many different volunteers until we were confident. And my English is pretty good, I think. But my wife was very worried about hers. So the Letters-Free Council spent many hours practicing and doing one-on-one tutoring with Ruth to make sure she had her English skill she needed. So the day of our interview, we woke up very early in the morning at 3 a.m. to make all the sushi that Harris Teeter needs all the days. Then we drove to the Raleigh for our interview at 9:30 a.m. So we listened to the 100 questions on a CD the entire drive, starting all the way to the Raleigh as well. So Ruth went first, then 5 minutes later, they called me. The USCI officer I had very difficult to understand. He had a deep voice and mumbled, and he only looked at his computer screen. That was very difficult for me, but I made it. But during the interview, I just keep thinking about, what about Ruth? How is she doing? Before I go to the interview, I tell her, take it easy, really good. And I was waiting at going to be waiting at the waiting room. When I finished, when my interview and went back to the waiting room, Ruth was already done and smiled. She has such an easy time in her interview. The USCIS officer that she had spoke clearly and was much easier to understand the mind. So I am so happy that the Letters-Free Council spent so much time helping us study and making sure that we were both ready for our interview. They have made many great volunteers that help a lot of their students. They do so many things for the community, and they lost so much during the Hurricane Florence. I love for the Wilmington community to help the Letters-Free Council as much as they help their students. Thank you, everyone.
We are very, very lucky to do the work that we are able to do. Literacy actually affects everybody in this community, no matter who you are or where you're from or what you do with your life. Adults affect their families, their jobs, their communities, their churches, and their ability to thrive resonates through each of those areas. Today, our next speaker probably actually needs no introduction. Mr. Alan Perry has been a board member for the Literacy Council. He has a personal connection to literacy, and he's here to tell you a little bit about his own story.
Wow, it's like homecoming. Here we go. I'm Baptist born, so homecoming means a lot to me. But I didn't recognize Billy Granger today. She looks like a 19-year-old. I'll never forget the very first auction literacy thing I went to. I dressed as a Calypso man because I was told it was a costume event. And it was not a costume event. And so I wouldn't go in. My wife went inside and got 4 beers and came outside and said, "Drink all 4 of these beers, your butt's going inside." And I did. And Chris and Craig Turner, Chris was a ESL tutor for years. She walked by and she looked and she said, "That's Alan Perry." Because we went to church together. She recognized my eyes for some reason. And that's when I told Billy, I said, "You're losing a lot of money, Mike. These people know what they're doing, this auction. I mean, they're giving away money." So Billy said, "Why don't you come be the auctioneer and teach us how to make money?" So I think for 11 years or 12 years I did the auction on literacy night, whatever. But anyway, my connection was my father. I'm the baby of 6, and I never knew my father couldn't read or write until I was like 13 or 14 years old. And he wanted to learn to read, so he kind of helped learn how to read the Bible, which kind of blew me away. So I got involved in literacy back in 1993 or 94, so it's been 26 or 27 years. So it's one of the best organizations I could give to, and I've done my best to get back to it. And I'm going to give you the chance to get back. If you've got one of these programs, I want you to open up the first page, look inside. What's the first thing you see? Volunteer. By golly, volunteer. And we need 3-on-1 tutors really bad. And then participate. We need that really bad. And the last thing is donate. That's what I'm here to ask you to do, is to donate. And I want to ask you, when have you ever had a chance to stick it to a bank? Well, you do, because look at the very back page. It says Live Oak Bank will give up to $25,000 today to match whatever we give in this room. There's a small group here, but we got a lot of money. Nothing would please me more than be able to find out tomorrow that we walked out of here $50,000 richer or more because of what y'all did today and because of the generosity of Live Oak Bank. God bless Live Oak Bank for doing it. Inside on your paper, we're going to find an envelope. And inside that envelope will be other envelopes for you to give. And so I'm going to ask you to do that now, if you don't mind. There's plenty of pens on the table. I think we still do electronically also, don't we, Jasmine? Can they give electronically? They ask on the board up there. They can give them a credit card, they can give a check, they can actually use cash. If you want to be unknown, if you got a little bit of money, you want to know about it, put that in there. That'd be great. All righty, I think I'm done, Jasmine. You told me 5 minutes, and I'm a jeweler. I'm a seller. I'm done. God bless you. Thank you for giving.
Everybody's taller than me. I'll give you a few minutes to fill out your checks, or thank you very much. Thank you very much for supporting us. And table hosts, if you would please collect those envelopes. That's very helpful for us. As Mongza mentioned, and maybe not everybody knows, like so many other organizations and homes and families, we were affected by the hurricane. In fact, we have 2 buildings on our campus, our bright blue colored buildings, and one of them became inoperable after the hurricane. So it was a huge challenge for us, but it was one of those beautiful opportunities, in fact, because we strengthened our partnership with St. Andrew's Covenant Presbyterian Church that just welcomed us in. And I don't mean they just hosted us. I mean, they took us in like family, and they have treated us like family ever since. And we're very, very grateful to the staff and all the folks at St. Andrews for taking such good care of us and for hosting our ESL classes for 9 months until we could get back into our building. And I attribute a lot of their wonderful spirit to their leader, Derek McLeod, and he is here today actually to introduce our keynote author. Here's Derek.
Hi everyone. As a pastor, I'm usually asked to pray when I come to these events. I've never been asked to do an introduction, and I'm nervous to do this introduction. And I don't know what that says about me or our guest, that I am more nervous to introduce him than to speak to God. I don't know what that's about. But first, let me say how grateful we are for the Literacy Council. We miss y'all, and we want you to sell your building and raise all kinds of cash and come on back and live with us. That's a proposal right now. I'm making it a marriage proposal in front of everybody. But we're so honored to be partners and to be a part of the work that is done and of the lives of all who participate in the Literacy Council. I want to get this introduction right because Mark deserves it. He's an accomplished man, as you can read in your program, of the ways that he's been a reporter and that he's been a novelist, that he has done such great work through a wide variety of media. To be a writer is to say a lot of things and to cover a lot of territory. And Mark has done so beautifully, humorously, intelligently, and is so accomplished. His education at Exeter Academy, where one of my favorites, Frederick Buechner, was present, but also to be at Princeton and later to have a time at Harvard through a fellowship. Just an accomplished man and a native son of North Carolina, the second to be introduced today from Winston-Salem. And so he also chooses things well in life. Married Kay, who's with him today. And Kay is my favorite of the two. I like Mark, but I love Kay. And I hope you have a chance to meet Kay, who herself is a gifted artist and a potter, and so glad that you both can be in Wilmington today. Here's the thing. I first met Mark on my second day of work, which was my second day in Charlotte, which was about my 5th day in the United States of Canada, of America. I was coming from Canada. Yeah, not yet, but I was coming from Canada. And so Mark was one of the first people that I met. And someone told me that I hadn't moved to the States, I'd moved to the South. And that's a little different. And so there Mark was on my front lawn, day 2 of work, picking me up, because Kay and I were off to a meeting in Chicago, which was really exciting and fun. Mark extended his hand and welcomed me in such a way that I knew that I was truly welcomed. I'm so glad you're here, Mark said, and greeted me with an authenticity that you just can't fake. And when a few years later, 3 years later, when we discerned that we were coming to Wilmington, it was Mark who kept that welcome going. He knew Natalie English, our president of our business, tell me our name again, Chamber of Commerce, thank you. And so Natalie I met on my second day in Wilmington almost. And so Mark knows how to welcome. And so I'm glad to have an opportunity to welcome him to here and to Wilmington. But I think the idea of welcoming and of being generous and open-hearted, that's really at the heart of literacy. Because before literacy is a skill that you acquire, it's a position that you take. It's a desire to be included and to be connected and to be welcomed. And in order to be fully literate, you also have to be welcomed, and you have to be connected, and you have to be brought in. Literacy requires partners, and it requires each other in order that we make this fabric of society beautiful and strong. So I'm grateful, Mark, for your ability to write, your ability to welcome, and your generosity in being here with us today. It's a pleasure to welcome you.
been in a lot of churches, and I've heard a lot of preachers saying nice things about a lot of people. Now the thing is, they've all been dead. And so I kind of had to pinch myself. I'm looking around, there are all these people I'm going to get to talk to about my book. I said, maybe I'm dead. I mean, maybe this is my version of heaven. But the applause really ought to go the other way. I've been so impressed by the CFLC's work in providing personalized adult education in so many meaningful ways. And thank you to Live Oak Bank and to all of you whose generosity makes the council's work possible. I'm really delighted to be in Wilmington and the Cape Fear region. I like writing about people who are called on to do extraordinary things, heroes. And this is a place of heroes. The most obvious examples come from Hurricane Florence. During the event itself and in your remarkable recovery since, you are heroically resilient. Although I know there is still much work to be done. And for local heroes, you really don't have to look any further than the folks who are on this stage before me. You all have my deepest respect and admiration. You are real heroes, not fictional ones. I have a writer friend who says that all stories can be described by 3 symbols. And he draws this stick figure of a person. And then he draws a triangle representing an obstacle. And on the other side of the obstacle, he's got this kind of pot of gold, with a dollar sign on it, like you see at the end of a rainbow. And he says all stories are about someone trying to overcome an obstacle in pursuit of the pot of gold. For the people we have met today, that pot of gold is literacy. There is no reward more valuable. And of course, that reward goes not just to the learners, but to the teachers. And our gratitude goes out to them. I'm a journalist at heart. So as I talk about my work, I'm going to start with the true story and how and why it became fiction. On May 5th, 1970, during unrest all across America, anti-war unrest, civil rights unrest, a 13-year-old boy was shot in the head at range with a deer rifle following racial violence in a tiny South Carolina town near the Savannah River. For years, the killing went unpunished, unsolved, even uninvestigated. And things would have stayed that way were it not for, the only way I can describe him as a rich Yankee blue blood, whose family had a bird hunting plantation nearby. And the young man had a social conscience. And he kept hearing about the killing from people in the town and people who worked on the plantation. And it was clear to him that the event was like a festering wound for many people in the community. Unaddressed, untreated, getting worse. And the more he investigated, the more 2 things happened. He ran into pressure from his family. This is a local matter. Leave it to the locals. We don't need to be stirring up down here. Just let it go. And also from local officials who didn't see the point of stirring up things from the past. But the second thing that happened was that he began to get some idea of what had happened. Unsure how to proceed, he drove to the Charlotte Observer, the nearest newspaper around that he identified as having a pro-civil rights orientation. He was carrying a sheet of papers summarizing his work. He looked like an academician, kind of pale, horn-rimmed glasses, had patches on his sport coat. And he walked up to the receptionist. He said, "I want to talk to a reporter. I think I've solved murder." Well, so far that's the true story. It's at that point that my novel Grievances begins. I should say very clearly that it's a work of fiction, but it's fair to say that the story of the rich Yankee blue blood and the two Charlotte reporters, and I was one, that ultimately joined the effort to solve the real murder, certainly inspired grievances. I'm told I can say it's inspired by the true story. And it led to a movie version called Deadline that came out in 2012. I wanted to do two things when I wrote the book. I wanted to create a page turner. After it came out, somebody asked me if I was offended that a reviewer had written that grievance was a must for your beach bag, as if that meant it wasn't serious. And it's like, are you kidding? I mean, I was delighted. And that summer, I have to confess, I spent like lots of the summer walking up and down the beach hoping. I think finally, my wife bribed somebody a couple umbrellas down, gave them a copy, and said, listen, just stay here, please. The second thing I wanted to do is I wanted to educate people about newspapers and journalism. Do y'all remember those old Arthur Haley novels? I mean, there was Airport and Wheels, and there was one about banks and Hotel. I mean, you could read Hotel, and afterwards you thought, well, I could run a hotel. I mean, you know, it was something you could do. And so you got a lot of the inside knowledge, and I thought I wanted to create that same feeling in grievances about the newspaper business, and I thought, well, it'll also give me a chance to opine on the direction I think many newspapers have gone in. The main thing I wanted to do was create characters that people care about. Novels are not about what happened. The true secret to novels is creating characters people care about and putting those characters in a situation where they have an opportunity to grow, evolve, achieve, triumph, fail. People want to look at these characters and identify with them, to compare how the characters respond with how they themselves would respond. This is why Grievances is a novel. I'm not interesting enough to be a main character in a novel. But if you took certain aspects of my life and other people's lives and you kind of mixed them up and changed the time frames, you could become interesting. And so I created Matt Harper. He's working as a reporter. His job's on the line. His relationship with his fiancée is threatened. His dad is dying. I got to this point and somebody said, listen, could you just make it that his dog ran away too? So that's Matt Harper. And I used to think there was a muse and that you needed to wait for it to land on your shoulder before writing. Now I understand it's just like any other kind of work. You got to do it when you're supposed to, whether or not you feel inspired. It turns out there's almost something you can use. It is the only profession where you can truly appear to be working just by staring out the window. No, listen, people talk about writer's block. You know what writer's block is? You don't know what you want to say. You haven't thought enough yet. And it's like turning on a computer, and you got to let it go, and ultimately the program will run and the truth will come to you. It turns out there are conventions in novel writing just as the way there are conventions in writing for a newspaper or a legal brief. And they're hard to pick up if you're just a reader, but you can intellectualize them. They're there. If you're a writer, there's a code, you just didn't know it until you got started. I learned a few of these lessons when I gave the first half of the novel to my late friend, the cartoonist Doug Marlette, also a novelist. He took him down to the dock. We were at the beach. Came out of his room about 6 hours later to get a piece of paper and a pen, and we're going to go down to the dock, and I'm going to tell you things you need to know about novel writing. Starts off, he says, there are all the stories, he says, all the stories, all the great themes have been told. Murder, envy, lust, jealousy, tragedy, triumph. They're all in the Bible or earlier. All we do is invent different characters for telling them. 2, every character has to want something. Even the minor characters must have something in the balance. So you just can't have somebody hanging around. You gotta have something that you want to have happen for them. Number 3, this was important, adverbs are not your friend. It's the old show, don't tell. Don't say he said angrily, have him stomping around the stage, right? Number 4, most important, every word must have a reason for existing. I didn't really know what that meant until I got an editor. I thought I was a pretty good editor. I mean, we'd run a newsroom, we'd won Pulitzer Prizes, but there was a lot I didn't know about editing. I hired an editor on the recommendation of Doug Marlette and Pat Conroy, a guy named Jeff Kellogg, and I sent him my book, and he called up one day and he said, Mark, I've cut 15,000 words. It's a 105,000 word book. I said, chapters, characters are gone. I said, what did you cut? He said, nothing. Well, because of Jeff, I will never have a character shrug their shoulders. What else would they shrug? I will never have a character stand up. How else would you stand? Same with sitting down. I will never have a hot water heater. Why would you heat water that's already hot? So if you go through your book and you take out every one of these fat words, all you're left is words that have power. They're undiluted. Everything has power. Once Grievances was edited, we started sending it out for publishers. 0 for 19. In a year. All of them very nice. None of them consistent. None of them helpful. And then, just like that, totally random, one day, 2 acceptances, including from my wonderful publisher, New South Books, in Montgomery and Louisville. Book tour followed. I was speaking about Grievances on the book tour at my boarding school, Derek mentioned New Hampshire. And in the audience was a classmate, and he said that he had read Grievances and he'd liked the speech. And he said he was a movie maker, and he wanted to make a movie about it. And I'm thinking, okay, it's your high school reunion, right? Everybody's a movie maker. But it turns out he was, and he made some pretty good movies with Sally Field as sort of level stars. And it took a few, he hired me to write the script, and we went back and forth. 85 drafts. He found the money, and Grievances was shot in Nashville and elsewhere in Tennessee, and came out in 2012. And I did a tour, 71 days, 46 cities, in a tour bus that slept 11. It was a remarkable time. Now, I don't think there are any of us who haven't said or heard said, well, it was good, but the movie did not follow the book. And I will share with you some key lessons about why that is and why it has to be. Grievances, the book was 278 pages. Movies have to fit into an audience attention span box of between 90 minutes and 120 minutes. Sometimes you'll get some mega thing, but really that's a piece of screenplay, dialogue, minimal description is 1 minute. So you got 100 pages. So 278 pages have to become 100 pages. Events, characters, scenes disappear or eliminated entirely. Every actor costs money. Characters get consolidated, they get cut. Some of the implications aren't serious. I learned this one day when the director called up and said, if the 2 dogs that I had written into a scene were really necessary. He said there was no place where the dogs ever appeared again, and that they didn't seem to have any way connected with the plot. And I agreed with that, but I said I'd included them because I did this wonderful description in the book of the dog's tails wagging like car windshield wipers after a spring rain. Right? Which is in, I kind of wanted to get that in there. And he said, well, I said, why not leave him in? You mentioned a figure that was $10,000. Hiring the dogs, their handlers, having someone from the SPCA. plus the fact that the dogs were much worse than most actors when it came to following their cues. And needless to say, the dogs are not in the movie. Now, these money decisions don't have to diminish the quality. In fact, probably one of the most changes in plots concerned a character that change that makes the story even better. In the real life and in the book, it's two male Charlotte Observer reporters and this rich Yankee blue blood of about the same age. In the movie, the rich Yankee blue blood is a 21-year-old woman estranged from her father, living in opposite sides of this big plantation house. So now you have somebody to appeal to a whole different group of moviegoers, like teenage boys. So I groaned when the DRA called me up and he said, look, this Everett Hall III has to become a woman. And I'm thinking, oh man. And he said, no, I've been through the whole script. Nothing has to change. Maybe a pronoun here or there, but really it's all perfect. I said, what about her name? Everett Hall III? He said, she's a Southern girl. She can have any first name that she wants. Well, also based on some true stories, my second novel, Fallout, is set in a small Ohio river town in West Virginia where I grew up and where my father ran the weekly newspaper. I'm going to read you the cover blurb. Josh Gibbs, the editor of the weekly newspaper, gets two pieces of news from Dr. Allison Wright that change everything. The first is that his 13-year-old daughter has cancer. The second, that a mysterious condition is plaguing her patients, leads the widowed newspaperman and the divorced physician in pursuit of an unimaginable danger. Fallout is the story of their journey, a journey through an Ohio river town's myths, heroes, and oddities, from Native American curses to rat fishing to, and this is coincidence, an alternative view of George Washington. Above all, Fallout is a story of corporate irresponsibility, of political self-interest, and a potential catastrophe that looms in most American cities, and I would include Wilmington. And finally, I'll end with this. I've just finished the first write-through of my third novel. It starts with another true story. I was on a book tour when a woman came up to me and said she'd always wanted to meet me. Your father married my mother, she said. I knew who she was. We'd never met. My parents had gotten divorced, and my father remarried long after I was an adult. I knew his second wife had kids, but I'd never met them. The woman said her mother had died. My dad was dead. She said she was going through her mother's things and found letters from my dad to her mom. She said she thought I might want to have them. But she warned me, there are some things in there that you might find surprising. I looked at the top letter. It was written on that old kind of, some of you all may remember that old Par Avion airmail stationery, kind of crinkly blue, when it's special postage for airmail back in the day. And that letter, the top letter, most recent letter, was dated about the time my parents' marriage was breaking up. I looked at the bottom letter. It was dated before I was born. I was telling a friend about this, and he wanted to know if I had read the letters. I said I hadn't. He said, don't. You have the beginnings of a great book, and right now, the letters can be anything you want. He asked me to think about this. What is the most interesting thing that could happen? That's what I've been working on for the last few years. And you can find out what happens by looking for Blood Relative when it comes out before too long. Thank you again for having me. Thank you most especially to the CFLC, supporters like Roger, volunteers, and all of you here today. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mark. We appreciate your journey to Wilmington to support our organization. I have to tell you, as soon as I found out that you were coming, I bought Grievances. I went on to Amazon.com and I ordered it. And it was a great beach read. And my mom actually leaned over and said, "Hey, can I borrow that for my beach trip this week?" So thank you. That's what I told her. Perfectly transition there. We are going to have Mark's books available out in the lobby after the event, so make sure you stop by there. Great books to check out. I can't wait to read the other two. So thank you so much. Couple more. I love to end events like this with more thank yous because really and truly, we are so grateful. We are so inspired by our readers and our learners and our volunteers. But we're also very grateful for our leadership giving community. And I just want to recognize, if you're a member of our Literacy Trust 100, these are the people that make a commitment to give monthly over a 5-year period. If you would stand, if you're a Literacy Trust 100 member. Thank you so much. And last but not least at all, because we could not do it without our amazing committees that put together events for us, help us to lead the Literacy Council from the board perspective. Dana McCoy, Nancy Scott Finan, Geneva Reed, and Blair Kutro, if you could please stand. These four amazing women put this entire event together today, from the wonderful middle of the island to helping us secure our speaker to providing the beautiful decorations on each table. So we thank you so much for your leadership and don't know what we would do without you. Thank you again for being here today. Thank you again for hearing our story. As Derek said, literacy is so much more than just being able to read or being able to do a math problem. It's the connection to the community. It's the connection to your church. It's the connection to those around you. And I hope that you will go out into the community after this event and share our story and notice around you the important moments that literacy matter. Thank you so much for coming today.
Well, I'll wait and get through the summer. And I've had my same student for about 2